6:04 p.m. and I'm going to call this meeting in order. You good to go? Mike, you good to go? All right. I am Matthew Pianca. I am the chairman of the Harrisburg Zoning Hearing Board. I'm here tonight with Mr. Claude Phipps and Ms. Joanne Gray. We also have the city zoning administrator, Mr. Jeffrey Knight, and the city law bureau is here with us as well. There is a court reporter here. The court reporter is here because the zoning hearing board is more formal than the planning commission. The court reporter is making a transcript in the event of an appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. The zoning hearing board is like a court of law. The zoning hearing board's decisions must be based on facts and law, not on the popularity or unpopularity of the project or what seems to the board to be a good or bad project. In other words, the applicant must meet a legal burden of proof that proves the elements of a variance or a special exception. The law is the city's zoning code and the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. To audience members that are here and who reside or own property close to the subject property and has something legally relevant to say will have an opportunity to speak. Audience members must speak one at a time and they must not interrupt the testimony that's being transcribed by the court reporter. We do not have any continued cases. So we will start with new business 2564. This is a variance and special exception for their application for 1500 Paxton Street. Can the solicitor please read into the record the documents that are in the file?
Okay, so we have B1 is the proof of publication in the Patriot News November 5th and November 12th, 2023. B2 is the letter sent from the planning director, Mr. Knight, to the applicant notifying of the hearing. B3 is a hearing notice that was posted on the property. B4 is applicant's notification letters and proof of mailing to the required neighbors. B5 is the application with an attached narrative. B6 went along with the application. It was applicant's exhibits to that application. B7 is the deed to the property establishing applicant's standing to pursue the zoning relief in this matter. B8 is the Planning Bureau case report, and B9 is the City of Harrisburg Planning Commission resolution. So B1 through B9.
All right, thank you. I'm now going to swear in the zoning administrator. Jeff, if you please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, please briefly summarize the case, the issues, and what the city's position is on the case.
Yes, so the application for case number 2564, the applicant is proposing to increase the non-conforming height of the existing off-premise sign and to install an LED sign face on one side. The height of the proposed billboard will be increased from 67 feet above grade to 75 feet above grade per section 7-325.14A5 of the zoning code. Billboard shall be a maximum of 40 feet above the average surrounding ground level, and thus approval of a special exception is required for this aspect of the proposal. Additionally, the applicant is proposing to replace an existing signage face with an electronic changeable message board utilizing LED technology. Per section 7-325.14A6 of the zoning code, an off-premise sign may have direct or indirect lighting, but internal illumination and electronically changing signage is prohibited, and thus approval of a variance is required. So for the current case, the applicants are proposing to relocate an existing billboard on the subject property slightly to the southwest of where it currently sits in the middle of a surface parking lot. As noted in the case report and the resolution, the billboard height will be increased by about 8 feet. In this case, the applicant is requesting approval for the LED signage face as they will be losing, I believe it's 18 structures, individual billboards as part of the I-83 widening project. And so this can be seen something as a consolidation of the billboards and the signage faces that will be lost. And to do so in one billboard obviously requires a changing message. And, obviously this is something that's more and more common around the region and the state to see electronic billboards. Additionally, with respect to the increase in height of the billboard, the applicants noted during their testimony that because the height of the highway will be elevated a bit, And because they'll be moving the sign closer to the highway, they will need to ensure that it's elevated a little bit above or higher than the surrounding grade below it. So that's kind of due to both the topography of the site, which kind of slopes down to the west where they'll be moving it, and then also because of the increase in elevation of the highway itself. With that being said, the Planning Commission recommended that the Zoning Hearing Board approve the request with the following conditions. If the board approves the applicant's request as submitted, the applicant will be in conformance with rules and regulations set forth by the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation and receive approval from said entity subsequent to decision by the Zoning Hearing Board. And then secondly, the applicant will ensure that message transitions will conform to general PennDOT standards. And this was a bit of a revision on the Planning Bureau's initial condition here, and we provided you with some of the documentation that the applicant provided to the Planning Bureau regarding PennDOT standards for sign face changes. So they have met that condition. The Planning Commission recommends that the Zoning Hearing Board approve the request for the following reasons. The relief requested by the applicant is intended to offset the loss of 18 structures with 30 signage faces at various points along the stretch of Interstate 83 running through the city due to the highway widening project. Although the proposed sign will be slightly taller and closer to the highway than the existing sign, because the project does not represent the addition of another billboard on site or otherwise increase the number or size of signage faces, it represents the minimum change necessary to address the substantial loss of billboards to the proposed highway widening and associated condemnations. And finally, as the property is located in an industrial and auto-oriented corridor and will face a widened highway and railroad, its installation should not be detrimental to the general character of the neighborhood.
Thank you. To the applicant, could you please state your name, your residential address, and business title, and I will swear you guys in.
Michael Adams, residential address, 12 Red Haven Drive, Selinsgrove, PA. Work for Lamar Advertising of Harrisburg, PA.
All right, yeah.
I'm Andy Rebuck. I'm the general manager of Lamar. Our offices are in Lemoyne, 308 South 10th Street, and I reside in Mechanicsburg, 6 Hearthstone Court.
All right, thank you. If you could both please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please tell us about the project.
You want me to jump in?
Yep, go ahead.
Mike is such a great guy. He's the real estate manager at our company, and I know he provides such great details of the project. And so I'll stick to my notes just for a minute. I use brevity as my guide. I stick to my notes because I know folks want to get home and see the Eagles win tonight. You know, most assuredly, I'm glad to be here. We've been blessed so many times over by our relationship with the city government and city businesses. It goes without saying that on behalf of myself and all of our employees, we're just really appreciative of the time and effort that you're giving us tonight. The Planning Bureau has been awesome. Planning Commission were awesome. You know, Lamar replaced an existing billboard with a new billboard, and we'll meet the city requirements, and then, of course, we'll meet the state requirements. We can all appreciate that a digital, this changeable message center, is a lot faster way to change copy. It's a lot faster than the way we used to do it when we would hand paint Chuck Rhodes' face and then put the billboard out a couple days later. And now even today, they're printed on a vinyl material and stretched around and put in place, tethered in place. So digital technology has been good for us. And since the first one was put up in 2005 in the area, and then in the city in 2007 and 2010, I think we've demonstrated over those years that digital technology is safe, it's effective, and it's beneficial. You know, we're a first-class outfit, Lamar is. We treasure our relationship with government bodies, including the city, as well as entities like the state police, U.S. Marshals, the FBI. We have good relationships with our property owners, local regional businesses, so many nonprofit organizations, and of course with the motoring public. We take our role in this community very seriously. Let me wrap up my short notes with a big thank you. The 83 highway project by PennDOT is needed, but it is a kick in the proverbial rear end for Lamar. I won't cry. we won't be able to replace the number of billboards that the highway project will take from us. But, you know, this is a step in the right direction to replace an existing one with a digital technology. If Mike and I work together with the property owners, we hope to come back 2 more times to this group, maybe within the next 12 months, and basically have the same story. It's interesting because I've only been here twice in the 30 years I've had this hat on my head. Once when we did this digital sign on 2nd Street coming into the city, and once when we owned a property up in 4th Street in the city, and the mayor asked if he could buy the property so he could put houses there. And so we sold him the property and took down the billboard, and in exchange, we garnered the ability to put a billboard down on Cameron Street that you owned. But again, thank you for your time and effort, and if you have a specific question about the project, I'm gonna turn it over to Mike, because he is totally able to answer any question you have.
Just ready for questions, is it?
I can take questions, or I can tell you, it's, I think the planning bureau summed it up fairly well. The 2 things we were looking for is, and they summed up on the height difference, and that, as they said, it's just basically because of the change in the elevation of the road and topography. Basically, if we go at the same site, we'll be staring right in the, you'll be looking right in, basically, you'll be about halfway up the billboard. You won't be able to see it. So that was that one. And in terms of the digital side of it, Andy did. Currently, that billboard is a legal non-conforming use. It is in the, I will note, it is in the correct zone. It is in an industrial zone. The use is zoned correctly. So they're the 2 major things, is that we're not asking for anything to put it in a place where the city doesn't already say it should belong.
All right, start our questions with Ms. Gray. Do you have any questions? I don't have any questions. Mr. Phipps?
One question. Will anybody get what I was question?
Okay?
The signage, yes, let's do this. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. The signage, is it for, and the digital signage, is it for your customer base only? Because again, you're gonna be taking out, other billboards in that area. You said it was 18 or something that you're collapsing down. So will they be will you add those people as an additional customer base for you? Or did you have you owned all 18?
Well, that's a great question. So this billboard will get built with an electronic face that Lamar allows up to 6 customers to be on it at one time.
Okay.
And so it's a lot of the local businesses that you know and love, and
Okay.
some regional businesses that you know and love, and then maybe even a couple of national businesses.
Okay.
You drive by and you'll see your favorite public service message up there as well.
Okay. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'm going to open the floor to the public. Is there anyone to my right that has, anyone in the center? All right, Mike?
I'm good.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to approve with the conditions set forth in the Planning Committee's resolution for approval. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Gray. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Go Eagles.
Steelers already lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not good. Not good.
I'm going to call up 2565, the special exception application for 415 Schuylkill Street next, and let the record show that Mr. Knight will already be sworn in from the previous case. If the solicitor could please read into the record the documents that are in the city's file.
Sure. So we have, again, B1 is the proof of publication, Patriot News, November 5 and November 12, 2023. B2 is the letter sent from the planning director to the applicant notifying of the hearing. B3, hearing notice that was posted on the property. B4 is the applicant's notification letters and proof of mailing to required neighbors. B5 is the application. B6 are photos of the property. There's 5 pages of those. B7 is the deed to the property establishing applicant's standing to pursue the zoning relief requested. B8 is the Planning Bureau case report, and B9 is the City of Harrisburg Planning Commission resolution. So we got B1 through B9.
Thank you. Mr. Knight, if you could please summarize the case, the issues, and what the city's position is on the case.
Sure. So the application for case number 2565 is a proposal to construct a two-story building featuring a first-floor coffee shop cafe and 2 units on the upper floor, and which requires relief from the requiring relief from the off-street parking requirements. The proposed uses both require zoning hearing board approval of special exception applications per section 7-305.7 of the zoning code, and the project additionally requires zoning hearing board approval of a special exception application for relief from the off-street parking requirements outlined in section 7-327.6 of the zoning code. So this proposal is being proposed for a currently vacant lot at the subject property. Per the Planning Bureau's research, the lot's been vacant since at least 2000, so it's been a long time vacant parcel. The proposal itself will largely fall within the applicable zoning criteria, most specifically the development standards such as setbacks and maximum impervious surface coverage. Building height is similar to other buildings in the existing in the surrounding neighborhood. And overall, the number of units being proposed is within the density regulations of the zoning code. So as a general matter, the overall massing and configuration of the property is in conformance with the applicable requirements of the zoning code. With respect to the type of use, obviously the surrounding neighborhood is largely residential. However, directly across the street or to the northwest is the Polyclinic Hospital, and then several blocks to the north is the Steele School, which the school district is currently in the process of rehabilitating. And so that neighborhood context kind of ties into the relief from off-street parking as well. The applicants expect that many of the customers for the coffee shop cafe business will be from residents from the surrounding neighborhood and or workers from these nearby businesses. It's also fairly close to 3rd Street and the Madeline Olewine Library as well. So there are a number of different potential points where customers would be coming from, and it's likely that they'd either be, parking for a short period of time, going in, getting their coffee, or walking to the property itself. With that being said, the Planning Commission recommends that the Zoning Hearing Board approve the request with the following conditions. If granted the requesting zoning relief, the applicant will submit the required land development plan application and receive approval from City Council. And as the applicant has not filed additional zoning relief requests related to aspects in the development standards, such as fences, landscape screening, and trees, they will ensure that all applicable considerations are reflected in the land development plan. The Planning Bureau recommends that the applicant retain the existing mature trees along the side and rear property lines if possible. And that was more just to ensure that the applicant was aware of these additional considerations in the final designs, that they were not left out, requiring them to come back through and do zoning relief. The Planning Commission recommends that the Zoning Hearing Board approve the request for the following reasons. The applicant has demonstrated that they have met the burden for granting the zoning relief requests. The applicant has designed the building and site to maximize the potential of the site, including space for the units and the inclusion of as much off-street parking as possible, while minimizing the amount of zoning relief necessary, as it will conform with all aspects of the development standards. The massing and siting of the proposed development will reflect the character of the surrounding neighborhood, which primarily features 1- and 2-unit residences constructed to the full width of their lots, and many of which are constructed to the front yard setback line. Per city and county records, the property has been undeveloped since at least 2001. As such, the project will result in the improvement of a vacant and overgrown lot with housing units, which are a pressing need throughout the city, and a small business that will cater to the surrounding residents and workers, including employees of the nearby Polyclinic Hospital and the Steele School. And finally, the project advances the purpose of the RM zoning district provided in Chapter 7-305.4C of the zoning code, as it provides a development at medium densities that will not adversely affect the stability of the area, and advances the community development objectives outlined in Chapter 7-301.27 of the zoning code.
Thank you. If the applicants, if you could both please state your name, residential address, and business title, and I'll swear you in.
My name is Juan Carlos Javier Antigua. I am the owner.
Your address?
My address is 920 Cypress Lane, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay. You, sir?
Have Jonathan Holmes, Integrated Consulting, site engineer, prepared our application with the applicant. We're located at 403 North Front Street, Warrensburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay, if you could both please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do.
Okay, thank you. Please tell us about the project.
Well, the applicant would like to, as stated by previously this evening, would like to put a coffee shop on this vacant lot. Would be welcomed in this neighborhood. With dwelling units above to provide some additional dwelling space by virtue of being a corner lot. There's on-street parking on two sides of the property. We're also putting parking space on the site as that will include a ADA accessible parking space. I think that the uses is welcomed in this neighborhood, and as previously stated, that a lot of the clientele will be walking as opposed to driving as a destination location. This will be more of a neighborhood spot to go by residents and workers in the area.
Well, basically, as a family doing business in this capital city for about 6 years, we feel grateful for potentially have this opportunity to serve the community in a different way, making something different in this uptown, and more grateful than may be the first coffee shop in the whole uptown and in this great capital city. We are happy and excited to have this opportunity with your consideration.
All right, I'll start questions with Mr. Phipps.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Question, you said this will be ADA compliant, so you're gonna do a curb cut. I'm looking at the pictures of it, so you'll do the curb cut for the ramps and stuff to allow people to enter from the street, right?
Yes.
Second question, you're gonna have, on the second floor rental, you're gonna have rental property there, right?
Well, my intention is who is going to manage this business for me is one of my longest friend and my mom.
Okay.
So that's my intention. But eventually, it could happen because we don't know, it grow, expand. It could be a potential opportunity, but the initial intention is my mom is planning to live up there, and one of my best friends who is going to manage the business.
So the building managers will be basically living up
Yes,
top.
that's the intention.
Okay. Well, with that, I didn't need to ask my third question, so. And they're asking for parking space relief, correct? Okay. That's all I had. Oh, thank you. Well, I had one more question. I looked at the pictures that you submitted, and you show the pictures representing, I guess, a historical building that has a coffee shop on the first floor and living space on the second floor. That's in York. Your building you're gonna do is gonna be new construction, and it'll match the building construction of the surrounding neighborhood, correct?
Yeah, that was just the intention to show example in similar businesses. But the intention in this construction, it will look way better, matching the neighborhood view and improve the integrity in this neighborhood.
So those photos and stuff will be with part of the land usage plan that they submit?
Yeah, and I had, in my previous discussions with the applicants, I had recommended that they consider maybe providing a sketch to give the boards an idea of what they were looking like, and they said, they wanted to see whether they were going to get the zoning relief first, and they definitely intended to do so for the land development plan. So the zoning relief was more related to the aspects or the uses of the property, and not as much like the design, which would factor more into the land development plan. So they wanted to provide an example of maybe what this would look like, so they pulled something from nearby.
Yeah, okay. That would be my concerns. It's a corner lot, it's in Uptown, but if you look at all the other buildings in that area, okay, what you put up, will it match the type of construction is there, because some of that area is also residential. You have single-family dwellings there too, going down Fourth Street, and so that was just one of my questions and concerns. Thank you.
My question is more for Jeff. If it was just a, say, 2-unit, how many parking spaces would have been required?
Just 2.
Okay. 3 for 3, or is it?
Excuse me?
3, if it was a 3-unit?
It would require 4 then.
Okay. Yeah. One second. What are the business hours for the coffee shop?
Well, at the beginning, we're planning to serve the community between 8 in the morning and 7 in the evening. Eventually, we're planning to open at 5 in the morning and close at 8 in the evening.
Ms. Gray?
I'm a little confused, but I believe so for the plot we showed. We're planning to put two parking spot, 2 or 3 parking spot in the back.
3.
And, yeah, 3 parking spot in the back, and, yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Were you able to hear my question?
Yes, I get it.
Okay, so yeah, the 2 parking spots in the back, which is 3, 2 of them will be for the units on the 2nd floor. And
Yes.
then again, Patreon parking will be on the 2 connecting streets?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Jeff, I have one question. Schuylkill Street and Fourth Street, there's meter parking in that area, correct? So, I think there is.
I know there is along 3rd Street in front of Polyclinic. I honestly don't know off the top of my head how far east that goes.
Okay.
But I believe there's metered parking along 3rd Street at least.
Okay. Yeah, I wondered, would that have an impact on the walk-in traffic or the people, basically gonna be your customer base for that? Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Mike? I'm going to go to the audience. Okay. Is there anyone to my right in the audience that has, anyone in the center? Jeff, anything else? Mike, you're good?
Yep.
Okay. Then I'm going to make a motion to approve with the conditions set forth in the Planning Commission's resolution for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Phipps. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. That's going to bring up 2566. And I'm going to, actually, I'm going to turn this one over to Mr. Phipps, Mike, because I work in the affordable housing industry. This one's part of the affordable housing, so I'm going to recuse myself from it. So. Okay.
All right, so then he'll appoint
Yep.
the 2. We'll appoint Mr.
I need
Haas.
to make a motion. One of the things the zoning board is that if we vote on this and it's a tie vote, that means the motion will be denied. So in order to make sure we don't have a tie, we have another associate for the zoning board, Mr. Hobson. I need to swear him in.
You need to make a motion to
Make
appoint
a
him
motion
to
to
the board.
appoint Mr. Hobbs to the zoning board,
And then you need a second here.
and I got a second? Okay,
All in
so,
favor?
all in favor? Aye. Well, come on. Okay, so we have Mr. Hobbs, so now, again, we'll have not a tie decision. Okay.
And then I'll just read the exhibits in,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So again, we got B1, proof of publication, Patriot News of November 5 and November 12, 2023. B2 is a letter from the planning director to applicant notifying of the hearing. B3 is the hearing notice posted on the property. B4 is the applicant's notification letters and proof of mailing to required neighbors. B5 is the application with the attached narrative, and with that, there was also exhibits attached to that. So I'm sure we'll hear more about those, obviously, tonight. B6 is an agreement for the sale of the property. B7 are deeds to the property going back prior to that. B8 is the Planning Bureau case report, and B9 is the City of Harrisburg Planning Commission resolution. And just one thing, the city applicant is here represented by Attorney Esh McCumbee. The agreement for the sale had the buyer right on it. Is that just pending this tonight, or what is with regard to that?
They now own the property.
Okay.
They've closed on it.
Got it. Okay. Okay, with that, though, B1 through B9.
Okay, well, thank you. Again, the planning director will read in to the record, the record and recommendations from the planning board and from the zoning organization. He's already been sworn in, so Mr. Knight, continue.
Sure. So the application for case 2566 is a proposal to construct a 48-unit apartment building with a community center component. And to be clear, that is limited to the residents of the building, along with various site and access improvements, which require zoning hearing board approval of special exceptions to establish a multifamily dwelling within the RM zoning district per section 7-305.7 of the zoning code, and zoning hearing board approval of a variance for relief from the maximum building width in section 7-307.3 of the zoning code, which limits building widths to no greater than 20% of the prevailing width of the block. So to give a little history of the property, I believe this was before any of the current board members were on the zoning hearing board, but there had been a couple proposals for development of this site in the past, I believe in 2017 and 2020. Neither of those ended up obviously going forward. So the current proposal is very much keeping in line with those proposals, which were for about 50-ish units that were for affordable housing. I believe those might have had some more of a outwardly facing component on them. But the current proposal does not, at least within the building itself. With respect to the variance request for relief from the maximum building width, many of the buildings in the surrounding neighborhood are row home developments or duplexes that actually occupy a significant amount of their property width. They might be 20-foot houses on 24-foot lots. And so although the current building frontage along North 18th Street, which is the front of the property, is much wider than those, from a ratio perspective, it's actually fairly similar to the width of the row homes in the surrounding neighborhood. And for this property, that does make sense. Obviously, it's a large property with a lot of frontage on both Bow Street, and North 18th Street that once accommodated a school. So the property itself is configured in such a way that to require them to be limited to, I think, 24 feet in building width would be an unreasonable request for this particular property. And so the Planning Bureau and the Planning Commission feel that the applicants have demonstrated a hardship and proven that the request meets the variance. As opposed to the multifamily dwelling component, although the property is in the RM district, again, it was previously used as an institutional use, and it's a fairly large property. So, requiring a single family on the lot would probably be an unreasonable request of the applicants, and the allowance for more units, 48 in total, will help address the need for affordable housing in the city. And so the overall proposal meets the requirements of the zoning code and the criteria for approval of the zoning relief requests. It should also be noted that the applicants are proposing to file through the city's affordable housing program, which reduces the density requirements in the zoning code, allowing them to fall within the permitted range for the number of units they are proposing on site. With that being said, the Planning Commission has recommended that the Zoning Hearing Board approve the request with the following conditions. If granted the requested zoning relief, the applicant will submit the required lot consolidation and land development plan application and receive approval from City Council. The applicant is required to receive a certificate of a qualification pursuant to Chapter 12-101 of Title 12, Affordable Housing Certification, prior to recording the lot consolidation and land development plan with the Dauphin County Recorder of Deeds. The Planning Bureau recommends minor changes to the project site, including the relocation of the bike parking shelter to the northeast corner of the building near the parking lot access, and the expansion of the dog park community garden space to include more of the eastern frontage of the property. And it should be noted that the applicants, subsequent to the Planning Commission meeting, did provide a revised site plan that did relocate the bike parking and expand the use of the grass area on the eastern side of the site. So the Planning Bureau considers this condition to be met. The Planning Bureau recommends that the applicant continue engaging with the public prior to the submission of a land development plan on potential site or building improvements that might enhance the value of the project to the surrounding neighborhood. And finally, the Bureau recommends that the applicant coordinate with the city engineer on the prohibition of on-street parking along the Boas Street side of the project site to allow for easier access to the accessory parking. And this part was added because the community expressed some concern about traffic to and from the parking lot access point along Boas Street. The Boas Street in this section is two-way, but it's fairly narrow here. And so the prohibition of parking along the Boas Street frontage of the property would allow for safe and fairly orderly access to people to and from the driveway access point on the kind of eastern end of the site along Boas Street. The Planning Commission recommends that the Zoning Hearing Board approve the request for the following reasons. The applicant has demonstrated that they have met the burden for granting the zoning relief requests. If the conditions of the Planning Bureau are adopted, the site design will maximize the potential of the site, including the provision of sufficient off-street parking and community benefits requested by the surrounding public at previous meetings, while minimizing the amount of zoning relief necessary. The Planning Commission and Zoning Hearing Board previously approved a proposal for a similar development in September 2020. Although the approval was automatically revoked per Section 7-323.5H of the zoning code after a land development plan was not filed, and the project design has been modified to be less intensive from that initial proposal. And finally, the development of affordable housing is a pressing concern throughout the city, and the size, configuration, and location of the project site makes it an ideal location for such a project.
Well, thank you. The applicants, I need you to give me your name, locate or your residence, and you'll raise your right hand to be sworn in, okay? Who are the applicants?
I'm the attorney for the applicant, she is the applicant, and those are her experts.
Okay, so, ma'am, your name and,
My name's Dr. Amber Borelli, and my work address is 940 East Park Drive, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
okay, thank you.
Ash McCombie, I'm an attorney with McNeese, Wallace & Nurick, 100 Pine Street, Harrisburg.
If you're gonna be giving testimony, I need you to raise your hands. Okay.
Martina Hedini with K&A Design Studio, 27 South Main Street, Hamburg.
Okay, thank you. Now, can you all raise your right hand? Okay, the information and statements you give are, to the best of your ability, true and represent factual representation of the project?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Okay, so we can start with the applicant, and
Great.
can you describe your project?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Well, I always want to just adopt Jeff's comments and let us all go home early. We will give you a bit of an overview of the project. So I'll be very, very brief before I hand it off to the rest of our group. The project is over 3 tracks located on the eastern side of 18th Street between Her and Boas Street. The applicant is seeking to consolidate those tracks into a multifamily building as affordable housing for seniors 62 plus. Property was formerly a 17,000 square foot school building that was demolished in 2016, and it's been vacant ever since. Property is in the RM district, within which affordable housing is permitted by special exception, or excuse me, multifamily buildings are permitted by special exception. So in addition to that special exception, we're seeking the dimensional variance that Jeff mentioned from section 7-301.3A of the zoning code to permit a maximum building width of greater than 20%. I will point out there's one typo in the narrative. It mentions that the building will be 58 feet in width. That was a prior version. In reality, the plan you have in front of you is for just under 61 feet in width. And as Jeff mentioned, the Planning Commission recommended approval, and we are fine with all of those conditions, with the one notation that the third condition related to moving the bike rack and expanding the park has already been addressed in the revised concept plan. So before Amber gets going, I'll hand out just a packet of exhibits. Most of them are, some of them are already in the packet that you have, but there's some additional
Thank you.
documentation as well. Amber, what's your role with Fernandez Realty Affordable Homes?
I'm the Grants and Development Manager for the organization.
And could you open the packet to Exhibit A2? And we'll note for the record, Exhibit A1 was the application package that was already submitted. What is Exhibit A2?
It's the aerial of the property and neighborhood where we intend to build.
And does Fernandez Realty Affordable Homes now own the property?
We do.
Could you please explain to the board why you're developing this particular property with affordable housing, or proposing to?
So we're proposing to develop this affordable housing unit to help fill the void in Harrisburg for affordable housing for especially seniors at or below 60% AMI.
Are you familiar with the neighborhood, the buildings, and other uses around the property?
I am.
And how would you describe the neighborhood?
So the neighborhood consists of mostly single-family homes or duplexes around the area, but directly across the street, I believe, is the Department of General Services building. It looks like kind of like a big castle building.
And have you reached out to the neighborhood community to discuss the project?
We did. So we had an initial meeting on, I believe it was July 6th at Harris AME Zion Church. From that initial meeting, we received a lot of feedback from the community, so we took that back to our design team. And then on July 26th, we met with the neighbors in a meeting facilitated by the mayor to talk about options for building on that property. After that, we had a meeting on August 28th at a community member's home and just talked again just about the project and about the concerns of the community. And then on October 10th, in preparation for this hearing and the planning board hearing, we took door knockers, door hangers. We went and knocked on all of the adjacent properties around and put door knockers if nobody was home.
So you mentioned you had made some changes based on community feedback. Was one of
Yes.
those changes eliminating commercial space on the first floor?
It was.
Have you reviewed the narrative that was submitted with the application?
I did.
And to the extent applicable, do you adopt the comments made therein as your own?
I do.
Are there any questions for Amber just about Fernandez Affordable Homes or the general background? We'll have others talking about the site specifically and the design.
Questions? Ms. Hobbs? I do have a question. Okay, you say affordable homes. The funding of this, is it through grants from the city, state, and federal government to support affordable senior citizens' homes?
It
Housing?
is. So we're preparing our low-income housing tax credit application to submit to Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, as well as I'm preparing a home application for the city.
Okay. My second question will be, if this is approved and and the building's going to be constructed, management of the building will be on-site or
Yes.
remote?
There'll be management on site as well as supportive services.
And I see, I know that corner very, very well, Her Street, the traffic, how are you going to, since it's going to be senior citizen living, how are you gonna handle the traffic volume coming up Hurst Street? Will entry to this property be allowed from Hurst Street side, or all entry will be from 18th or from the Bow Street side?
Mr. Phipps, if you might want to wait until the site plan's up, and then we can address that one for you. But to answer your question, it'll be off Boas.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Only questions I had. Now I'm gonna ask certain questions. Okay, so
Any other questions for Dr.
any other
Borelli?
questions? Okay.
Matt,
you
you want to come on
two-
up? You two can switch.
I'll switch seats.
All right, Matt, having already been sworn in, what's your position or role with Eustis Engineering?
I'm a senior project manager.
And in general, what do you do in that role?
Oversee day-to-day design, coordination of most land development projects that come through our Camp Hill office.
What is your degree in and from where?
I have a degree in landscape architecture with a minor in environmental studies from Temple University.
How long have you been working in this profession and designing projects?
20 years.
And when your team designs a project, you review the municipal zoning ordinances to ensure compliance or determine what type of zoning relief is required?
I do, yes.
If you could turn to Exhibit A3, please, in the packet. What is this?
As my CV, my resume,
And does it accurately describe your professional qualifications?
it does, yes.
I'd like to offer Matt as an expert in zoning analysis and site design.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine, yeah.
Matt, if you could now go to Exhibit A4, what is that?
It's the existing conditions plan we prepared for the site.
And please use it to orient the board to the property.
Sure. And I also have a board up on the tripod. The bottom of the plan, and same with you, packet information is 18th Street. To the left on the plan would be Hurst Street, and on the right-hand side is Boas Street. Long Street is at the top of the plan. That's a small alley there. And then, I'm sorry, we front on 18th Street, as Jeff had mentioned.
And is the property currently vacant?
It is a vacant site, yes. It consists mainly of, well, it is all open lawn area with a couple of trees along Hurst Street.
And 3 tracks currently?
It is, consists of 3 tracks, yes.
If you could turn to Exhibit A5 in your packet. How many pages is Exhibit A5?
It's 4.
Yep. And could you please describe them to the board?
Sure. The first page, these are all street shots of the site, looking from the surrounding streets. The first one is looking from Hurst Street. This is standing in the upper left-hand corner, be like the north corner of the site, looking back over the site towards 18th and Boas. The second page is standing at the intersection of Boas and 18th Street, down in this corner. Again, looking through the site. The third page is standing at the intersection of Her and 18th Street, so we're down here, looking up through the site. And then the last page is the same angle, however, this looks like it was taken conveniently when the old school was still standing.
Thank you. And if you could please now go to Exhibit A6, what is that?
A6 is our lot consolidation plan that we prepared.
And could you describe to the board what's shown?
Sure, and I have this up here, but I'm not gonna flip to it. Essentially, what we're going to do is take the 3 lots. There's the main lot here, Lot 1. Lot 2 is this skinny lot here. Lot 3 is the rear portion of that skinny lot. We're gonna consolidate each of those 3 into one in order to develop the site.
And the proposed use is multifamily dwelling. Is that permitted by special exception in the medium-density residential district?
Yes.
And could you please turn to Exhibit A7 and tell the board what it is?
Sure. Exhibit A7 is our site plan. This is actually the revised version that we did resubmit back to the Planning Bureau with some of the conditions from their original review letter met. It's also, this is actually an older version, but this is a nice, prettier version of what you see, just with some additional.
Do you want me to pull up the other sheet?
No, this is fine. This will work. So again, 18th Street is at the bottom of the site. Boas is on the right, and Hurst Street, although blocked by those shade trees, is on the left-hand side. We are proposing one building, one four-story, multifamily, affordable housing building for seniors. The footprint measures approximately 13,000 square feet. We'll have a main entrance off of the intersection of 18th and Hurst Street, and then a secondary entrance, which will probably get used more off the parking lot back here for residents. There will be some other exit doors around the perimeter. Right now, we have a little courtyard or a deck proposed off of the Boa Street. And then at the back of the site is going to be our 48-space parking lot, surface parking lot with 4 ADA parking spaces. It was mentioned during the narrative about some community space or potential outdoor space for the residents. On this version, we're showing a dog park area or a community garden area. On the revised version in front of you, you have an expanded community garden area, just, I'll call it northwest of the parking lot. Access to that parking lot will be off Boas Street with a new curb cut, new driveway apron. We're going to try to really emphasize the pedestrian nature of Boas, considering that there's a lot of townhouses to the northwest of us. And we had considered coming in off of her street. However, it is mentioned about the traffic on her. We felt the safer scenario would be come off Boas.
And I think you might have said it, but the building will be approximately 60.58 feet by 220.08 feet.
That is correct, yes.
And public sewer and water?
Yes, we'll do public sewer and water.
All right, and then, that's better for later. Is the parking compliant with the ordinance requirements?
It is, yes.
Does it exceed the ordinance requirements?
It actually does exceed the ordinance requirements. Right now, we are proposing per count 48 parking spaces. That's one parking space per unit. We are going to take advantage of the credit that's given for the affordable housing aspect of the project, which would be half a parking space per. So we'd only be required, being that this is a 48-unit building, 24 spaces. And some of those parking spaces may be used. There is a community room center proposed inside the first floor of this building as well. We're also going to take advantage of the extensive amount of off-street or on-street parking along 18th Street, and then there are spaces available along Hurst Street as well.
Will the parking lot be screened?
It will be screened per ordinance. We'll provide I think it's a 3-foot tall shrub screen around the perimeter, and then there are a number of parking lot trees that are proposed for the requirements.
You mentioned the extended dog park or community garden area. Mr. Knight had also mentioned that the bike rack had moved. Can you just point that up?
Sure. The original location for the bike rack was out here. On the version you have in front of you, on the 11 by 17, we've moved it in between the parking lot and the proposed building next to or near the main entrance off the back for the residents.
And why is the variance required for the building width?
As it was described earlier, the building width requirement is a 20% increase on the prevailing width of that block. In this particular block, we measured 20 feet, so we'd be allowed 24 feet. And obviously, we're much wider than that along 18th Street.
So we'll quickly run through the special exception criteria now. In your expert opinion, will the use be in conflict with other city ordinances or state and federal laws?
No.
Will it provide proper traffic ingress and egress and access to emergency vehicles?
Yes.
Will this multifamily housing create significant public hazards, in your opinion?
No.
Will it significantly negatively affect the character of the neighborhood by creating heavy truck traffic or odor or noise nuisances?
No.
Is that because it's generally residential in nature?
That's correct, yeah.
Did you implement adequate site design methods for lighting, landscaping, et cetera, to avoid significant impacts on adjacent uses?
Yes.
What will the lighting be like on this property?
We anticipate a combination of wall packs and pedestal-mounted typical parking lot lights, but they will be shielded where necessary from surrounding residents.
And so they'll be able to be directed inward towards the center of the property as opposed to spreading light out across property lines?
That's correct, yeah.
Section 7-331 deals with environmental standards for wetlands, steep slopes, et cetera. Are there any such features on this property?
There are not.
Does the use generally require create significant hazards like explosions, fires, biological, biogenetic, or toxic hazards?
No.
But for the dimensional variance requested, in your opinion, does the application comply with the requirements of the zoning ordinance and specifically the requirements of the RM district?
Yes.
In your opinion, is the variance necessary for this permitted use, a reasonable use of the property?
Yes.
Is the property size unique to the neighborhood?
Yes.
In your experience, do the regulations applicable to affordable housing make it much more expensive to construct than market rate housing?
Yes.
As a result, for affordable housing, which is a permitted use here, to be developed in the RM district, must it be a wider or larger building than what is permitted?
Yes.
Did the applicant create the hardship associated with the property?
No.
In your opinion, will the variance be detrimental to the public welfare?
No.
Will it alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district, or substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use of adjacent property?
No.
Is the requested variance the minimum to afford relief?
Yes.
Have you reviewed the narrative that was submitted with the application?
I have.
And to the extent applicable, do you adopt the comments made therein as your own?
I do, yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Witters?
Mr. Hobbs? I had two. I'm looking at your plan there, and I'm seeing a proposed subterranean stormwater storage area. You say it's proposed, are you still gonna do, or is it still, are you doing it, or?
Yes, yes, we'll have to meet the city's requirements and the CRW's requirements for
So they're gonna
stormwater
do
management. Absolutely.
Second, the green areas, the potential gardens and dog park area, will that area be fenced in? Will it be just flat, open space?
We're still working through that, and we'll have to come back through land development, through the city, but we're still sort of scoping that to see, what's called spitballing, as far as what the best approach might be for the residents.
Okay.
I think it depends on what that eventual use is. If it's a dog park, certainly it would be fenced in. If it's a community garden or something else, then, whether or not it's fenced might change. But those conversations are ongoing.
That's all I have, thank you.
Hold on.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Bow Street, that's a two-way street, and there's parking on both sides of the street.
Yes, there
Is there going to be any no parking in front of this building to
That-
accommodate for being able to see around?
That was one of the conditions that Jeff had included from the Planning Commission, that along Boa Street here, there will not be parking on our side.
Okay.
Good question. Any others for Mr. Witters?
Any other questions? We still have somebody to present.
Good. Thank you. We'll have Martina bring us home. What's your position or role with KMA Design Studio?
I'm a project manager,
And what do you do in that role?
architect.
How long have you been working in this profession and designing projects?
17 years now,
Approximately how many affordable housing projects have you worked on?
over 30 depending on, from schematic to construction at some phase or another.
Have many of those involved PHFA or similar governmental funding or tax credits and associated requirements?
Yes, the majority have been.
And before you is Exhibit A8, what is that?
That's my resume.
And does it accurately describe your professional qualifications?
It does.
I'd like to offer Martina as an expert in multifamily and affordable housing design.
Yep.
Thank you. What's your role with this project?
I am the architect slash project manager.
And was this project designed to comply with PHFA requirements?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it designed to comply with all other regulations that affect the quality of construction for affordable housing?
Yes.
What effect do those requirements have on the cost of constructing affordable housing?
It is certainly more expensive than a normal market rate project because of the different program requirements, from sustainability to sizes of the units.
And so the size of this particular building is necessary to accommodate those requirements?
Yes, that's correct.
Before you now is Exhibit A9. What is it?
That is our concept building rendering, which we can put up.
Thank you. And did your firm prepare this design?
Yes, we did.
Is it an exact depiction of what the building will look like?
No, not an exact. We'll be going through the design process, so it's not an exact as of now.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Matt. You might not want to go too far. Before you now is Exhibit A10. What is Exhibit A10?
Those are the floor plans.
And did your firm prepare these?
We did.
Could you please describe them to the board?
Sure. It consists of 48 total one-bedroom units. You enter off the corner of,
The red button.
yeah, 18th and Her Street. You enter into a lobby space, management offices and social service offices. Further down is a residential clothing, food pantry, and a little bit further down is exercise area and community room. The upper floors are very similar, mostly one-bedroom apartments, and then we have sort of lobby lounge spaces for the tenants on the upper levels.
Let's talk about the ADA units a little.
Sure, there are a total of 9 fully accessible units. There are 3 on the first floor, plus a hearing and visual unit on the first floor as well, and then another 2 on each of the other floors.
Does the building have elevators?
Yes, there are 2 elevators near the lobby.
One of the suggestions that came out with meeting with residents was to have a police substation. Are we still considering that option to see if it works both for the building, the neighborhood, and the police force?
I believe they're still talking through that as well, yes.
In your opinion, is the proposed building inconsistent with the design of the neighborhood?
It's not inconsistent, no.
Have you reviewed the narrative included with the application?
I did,
And to the extent applicable, do you adopt the statements made therein as your own?
I do.
Are there any questions for Martina? Or Mrs. Hidetnimi? Did I get it?
I didn't need me.
That's why I didn't say it.
Good evening. I just had a question about when you're coming up with layouts for these types of developments, what is used to set, I guess, the expectation or set the standard for square footage of units?
Sure, so PHFA has standards and certain room sizes that you need to adhere to. So they have minimum and maximum requirements for your apartment sizes depending like how many bedrooms. They also have minimum square footages for living space, dining space, bedroom space, along with square footage and dimensions for each space.
Okay, and these units are all, I'm sorry if I missed this, one bedrooms?
They are all one bedroom.
And so what is the minimum requirement for one bedroom?
I
For the
Oh,
overall square footage?
minimum for square footage,
Yes.
550 square feet. And it would be net square feet, it would be the inside face.
Okay,
And these are at 660 to 715, I believe.
Yeah.
okay. Just other question regarding design. Is there any concern with there only being an elevator at one end of the building, especially for folks that may be on the opposite end of the building, based off of the demographic that would be in this housing?
I don't think so. We've had other buildings similar to that and it hasn't been raised as a concern.
Okay.
Looking at the first floor, where would the possible police substation be located?
As we were saying, they're talking through that, but the idea is one of the office spaces could be used for the police substation.
Okay.
So does that, so then that's kind of an optional thing, I guess, that component?
We'll have to work closer with them to see their exact needs, but there's plenty of room that they can, either there's a meeting room and then there's 2 office spaces as well that could be used for them.
I think it's similar to some of the other finer details, like the park versus a garden, trying to work through with what the community wants, what the police can offer, how that all might work to make it fit.
Okay.
I've got some questions. Being that the client here, or your targeting is towards senior citizens, why weren't all of the units ADA compliant?
We actually, by code, we're much higher than what's required. Federally, you only need 5%. We've taken it times 3. And Amber can probably talk to this more, but sometimes if there's too many accessible units, it doesn't make sense for certain populations. You don't want all the requirements. So you'll have like lower kitchens, a lot of grab bars, but they all meet a certain level of accessibility anyway, just not fully accessible with grab bars.
But your customer, since it's all senior citizens, you're not seeing, it's not transient per se. You expect the people who basically go into these apartments to be there for a sizable period of time, 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
Yes.
And as we all get old and age and lose our hair, we start deteriorating almost, not always at the same rate, but we do deteriorate, and our requirements are different, okay?
I think some of the idea also is that people will transition. Right? My parents are in their mid-70s, and they get around just fine on 2 floors. And so as they get older in age, they may transition into something different that requires some more ADA compliance. It can be a similar concept here. But I think part of the reality is also that, ADA units are much, much more expensive than other units. And to make a project like this viable, there has to be a mix, even in the affordable housing context.
And I will say they are all adaptable. So they have the ability, they have blocking for future grab bars. They have the clearances for someone who is in a wheelchair. It's not fully accessible, but there are clearances by law that you do have to abide by for units like this.
So you could build out, if your demand becomes more than what you have available, you could earmark some of these other units and bring them up, bring it up to snuff.
Yeah, they can become reasonable accommodation for them, yes.
And Jeff, this is gonna maybe goes to them, but also goes to you. I've seen a lot, over the last year, I've seen a lot of developments and pictures of developments. How come they always look like this? Aesthetics, okay, I'm thinking of the community. I'm thinking about the neighborhood. Aesthetics have to play, the visual aesthetics of the building have to play a role to make it more welcoming to your customers, to the senior citizens, but also to the neighborhood that's gonna sit and occupy. It seems like I don't know, I'm editorializing this, but almost every building that wants to go up as a new building, they almost look the same to me to a certain point. There's no differentiation. It's like it's a cookie cutter mold that almost all the new developers are using. Is that, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but have you seen that? I'm thinking of places on 6th Street. I'm thinking of all the proposed places.
Yeah, well, there's no design overlay, for example, like for this location. And, the Planning Bureau stance in a lot of cases is to do the best version of whatever project you're doing, whether that's in terms of, layout, community benefits, the facade materials that you use. But I think we do run into the very real issue, as they had noted earlier, of affordability too. We're trying to, do something that at the base, at its core function is to provide a roof over people's heads and do that in a way that they can afford. And so that's a lot of times a primary concern in a project like this. And as a general rule, the Planning Bureau always, tries to recommend against maybe using EFIS, for example. But while recognizing that those can be a cost-effective way to insulate and provide exterior cladding to a property. So, we always do recommend to have something that kind of blends into the neighborhood, maybe uses some of the similar facade treatments, but at the same time understanding that at the end of the day, the important thing is to have 48 units that people can afford to live in. And so we do leave it to the applicants to bring their expertise into a project like this for something like that.
Thank you.
And that isn't necessarily what it is going to look like. I mean, we've all been, seeing these things, and and I agree with that, Mr. Chairman, but as I think we also just heard, that isn't necessarily going to be, you
It's
know,
a
right?
concept that may or may not change as we continue through the process. And I think it was mentioned before, we've got to come back through land development, so there'll be more feedback and
Question, utilities, okay, I'm just thinking the utility infrastructure in that corner, underground or above ground?
it's public sewer and water. What utilities? Oh, you mean the electric?
Electric and gas.
Well, electric and gas come in underground, or gas will be underground. What about electric?
Yes. In the back, yes. The last question about that, have you looked at maybe providing solar paneling for, again, we're talking senior citizens, so we're looking at costs and what it would cost. Will the apartments include utilities included in with their rent, or utilities will be separate, a separate item?
Dr. Barilli?
Yes, with PHFA, we have to either provide a utility allowance
Okay,
or pay the utilities.
okay. Thank you. I tend to, you've been in front of me, I tend to ask questions, so thank you.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so this time we asked the audience, and, yes, sir.
I did have some more questions. I was kind of gathering some things. So it may go to other witnesses that already went. And I first have a question, and I apologize if my direction is a little confusing, but I think it might go to Mr. Knight first and then to the applicant. And it's really about in the packet, we talk about the requirements for a variance. And there's a list that has to be met. And I read the one section multiple times when it comes to, sorry, I lost my spot. When it comes to hardship. And it's, I don't know, I've read it multiple times, and to me, it's a very vague statement, and essentially just equates to another one of the variance requirements. And so my question is, does each requirement not need to, not have to be, I guess, uniquely a factor?
Well, I think, you
On its
know,
own?
when we're looking at these requests, we do try and see whether whether the requested relief meets each of the criterion here, and they generally tend to build upon one another. It's are there unique physical circumstances or conditions? Were they created by the applicant? Would granting relief be contrary to the nature of the neighborhood? And as noted kind of in the introduction, you know, the hardship here really is the size of the lot relative to the other lots in the neighborhood. The particular building width regulation in the zoning code kind of ties any sort of new development to the existing development. In this case, much of the surrounding neighborhood is row home development, and you have this property that was formerly a school, so obviously it's not going to be built on the same either size or even kind of narrow configuration of the existing lots. And so, you know, to meet it, they would have to basically subdivide the property and then create almost row homes. Then as opposed to an apartment building. If you're building a larger building by its very nature, it's going to be larger than what the rest of the community looks like. And so in looking through these criterion for the variance, we're trying to, I guess, fit that idea and fit that thought into like what this, what the criterion are. So again, we're trying to demonstrate that because this lot itself is so much larger than all of the surrounding lots, and again, not created by the applicant because it was the site of a school earlier, that existing condition of the lot is what, you know, creates a hardship, because otherwise requiring them to build, for example, a single-family lot or a single-family home that's 24 feet wide would be, you know, kind of ridiculous for a lot of this size. And so there is that existing condition of the site that creates a hardship for them to build in conformance with the zoning code.
Okay, so then the follow-up on that then is, in the case of, like you gave the example, right, right now in that neighborhood is mostly row homes. When you see that is the norm in that area, is there any discussion or, I guess, evaluation on the ability to create that same type of structuring to conform with the rest of the neighborhood versus something that is very unique to that area?
Yeah, I think we do consider that, like whether this site could be subdivided for similar types of row homes. But then we have to look at kind of the overall goal of the project, which is to create affordable housing. And I think, we've had other applicants for different projects come before the board and basically have representations that to build a current row home, about 3 stories, is about $200,000, I guess, in today's market of a similar type as the surrounding neighborhood. And not only are you not going to get affordable units that way, but you're not going to be able to have places where residents can age in place, as we've kind of discussed here, where you might be able to come into one of the regular units, and then as you age, you might have to go to one of the ADA units. Like, if we're going to make it so that the property would have to be subdivided and then maybe 1-story, shotgun houses like constructed on the property that would be in conformance, you're probably pricing them out of the range of most people. And certainly most of, I would say, the current residents of the city who might otherwise be looking to move into this development.
If they were market rate?
If they were market rate, yeah. Again, I certainly don't have the expertise to know how much exactly it would cost to do that or what you'd have to sell or lease them for. But it would definitely be substantially more than what the current proposal is.
Okay. All right, I guess I'll shift that then over to the applicant. So I guess that is one of my questions is, so there has been let me back up. So to preface this, one of the things I always consider when these types of projects come to us is that, yes, there is a focus on affordable housing is great, but there's also very much a void of promotion of homeownership here in the city. And so I would love to hear that folks are considering that when they are doing new development here in the city, because there is definitely a shortage there. And so I guess my question is, was there any consideration to doing that type of development and using potential tax credits and things that are available to promote homeownership, as some other organizations are doing here in the city, before, coming to the conclusion that this was the best plan to move forward with this particular property?
I'll let Dr. Borelli answer, but I think part of the point of this project is also that it's senior living, it's 62 plus. And I think you have less of a drive to have home ownership in that age bracket. As Mr. Phipps said earlier, people are downsizing usually. And so with that in mind, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for this project, but Dr. Borelli may have additional comments.
And I generally just meant just for the general population, not necessarily that the target age range of the folks that are going to be staying in this development, but just in general for the population.
Our studies and looked at the research and the gap in affordable housing, the biggest gap that needed filled was that senior housing. So that we're hoping to fill that gap in our community while we also explore homeownership in other areas. This area unfortunately just wasn't feasible for that.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, so I know earlier on it was said that there was multiple discussions with the community, I think at large, and then even some individual conversations, and there were some adjustments made to your plans that you're proposing here tonight based off of those conversations and that dialogue. But I just wondering, at the conclusion of those conversations and what you have now, do you feel that there is a consensus that most of the neighborhood or the residents in the neighborhood are promoting this development in this project?
I wouldn't want to speak for them. I think
And so, in following up with that, then, are there any, I guess, stark complaints or any hard opinions that, of people that you know of that are against or have, take issue with the project?
There was definitely some complaints in regards to, there's a concern always when we build affordable housing of people's property values. And although there's research out there that shows that because these builds have to be done to such a high standard, they actually increase property value, but that's always a concern. The traffic situation in the area was a concern, and parking, which is why we really worked hard to get enough parking spaces in there for all the residents.
So but do you think that the people that were strongly against it, when you talk with them, do you feel that those issues have been properly addressed, or do you think there might be some still outlying?
I'm sure there's still some outlying concerns from different residents, but I know we worked hard in our due diligence. I don't want to sit here and say every resident in the neighborhood is really excited about it, because I don't know that they are. Anytime change happens, it's, you know, the plus or minus, so. But I will say with all confidence that we've done what we could on our end to modify the project in order to be a benefit.
And Mr. Hobbs, I would add that this is the third affordable housing project that I've been before this board for. And this group, before I even had the opportunity to say, go out and meet with people, talk with people, they had already met, they'd already talked, they'd already made changes to the plan. So I can attest to them listening. Whether they have accounted for everybody's concerns, you know, you can't make everybody happy, but I can guarantee that they put effort toward it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the time that we take input from the audience. Okay, so, right, left. On my right, who wants to speak on this project, please stand up. Used to be a microphone there.
Yes.
It went away up, yeah, so. Okay, hey, give me your name and your address.
My name is Karen Palmer, and I actually live on Brook Street. So, I'll keep this brief. I just want everyone to know that I was initially part of the group, we'll say, that was strongly opposed to this project. However, after meeting with the developer and Dr. Borelli, we've had several discussions. There have been changes that were made to the satisfaction of those opposing the project. To your point a few moments ago, there is definitely a few people that are opposed to this project. Matter of fact, they don't want anything done with that house. So, let me just say, to your point, there are more residents that are now in favor of the project than opposed. So, having said that, since everyone is here, I do have one question, I think that maybe I may have missed, or you can have an opportunity to talk about, but, I understand now that there will be parking spots lost on the side of the lot. My question is, since one of our major concerns was parking and the traffic, where are these people going to park? And also, will you lose spots on 18th Street? If that be the case, where are these people gonna park? Because certainly, we don't want them on Will Street, we'll take our spots. So, that is my question, because that was one of the main concerns, the parking, traffic. So, that's my question.
Matt, do you want to take whether we're losing any parking on her or 18th and then kind of talk through the bows?
Bow Street.
No, I think the second part of the question was whether we would lose anything on 18th or her also, right?
Yes, because there are residents
So we're not losing anything on her, we're not losing anything on 18th, we will lose some on Bose.
So with that said, the people that will lose spots on Bow Street, where are they going? My concern is them coming, trying to find a spot down at the opposite.
Sure.
Bow Street.
Yeah, I think with any development that would happen here, even if it were the row homes or townhomes like Mr. Hobbs was talking about, there's going to be parking that's taken up off of that street, off of Bose Street. With this outcome, I think that the net negative is as little as it could be, because they're covering all their parking for on the site, which leaves those other ones open. But at the end of the, it's the frontage along Boas, on their frontage, that would be losing spaces, not up and down on both sides. Does that make sense? Okay.
I just know when people are looking for parking spaces, they'll take whatever they find. We see that in the block that we live in. And fortunately, thank God, we have courteous neighbors. We're all allowed to park in front of our homes as homeowners, not visitors. So, I'm just
Understood.
Now, maybe there's gonna be some other, land, you know what I'm saying, that may be available for parking, that would be even great. Maybe something that none of us know about yet, I don't know, but that would be wonderful if that problem stays at that end versus coming to the opposite end.
Let me interject. Could you please stand up again and state your name here for the record?
Karen Hall,
Okay. And your address was
Bow Street,
specific, what was the number?
House number.
1718.
1718. Okay. And usually when we have people, though, stand up and offer testimony, I know you've already testified, but do you swear or affirm that your testimony already provided was true?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
I appreciate that. Anybody else from this side? Okay, let's go to the center. Anybody? I would say to that side, but Casper's are over there, so we won't cover those. Okay. Any additional questions for the applicants? Okay. You want to take a recess to talk about?
Want to take a break? Yeah,
You want
go
to take a
ahead.
break, or you?
Yeah, no, we could, I mean,
I'm
you
going to
wanna
take a
ask
slight
any-
recess so we can sum up what we've heard, and we'll basically bring our decisions back. Thank you. Just the Bow Street side, people would come down, because they fenced it all in.
We weren't even supposed to have these. We were supposed to have. I can't even turn this off. I can only like. But. Staying around here, going to my girlfriend's place. Probably. Welcome in. I don't know. We'll see. I've got some friends in town too. Maybe I'll come in for a couple hours or something. Yeah.
Oops. Oh, that was pretty late. Okay. Good evening, so we're back in session. We've had input from the developers and from the community. So I'd like to make a motion that this project be approved with the recommendations from the exceptions.
Conditions, right.
Conditions made by the planning organization.
Planning Commission with the note for that condition 3 that Mr. Knight, you, and also Attorney McCombie mentioned.
Thank you. So I need
Second.
a second? Okay. Motion's been moved properly second. Any vote now from the zoning board? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Close it. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice Thanksgiving. Appreciate it.
Bring back in our chair.
Get used to this, because you're gonna be doing this in front of a lot of people on a daily basis.
I don't know.
And now we're back as the talking heads.
Yes. Take your chair.
This is going to bring up 2567, a special exception application for 174 North 15th Street. Does anyone need a restroom before I begin? Okay. Will the solicitor please read into the record the documents that are in the city's file?
Sure. So we have B1, proof of publication, Patriot News, November 5 and November 12, 2023. B2 is the letter from the planning director to the applicant notifying of the hearing. B3, hearing notice posting on the property. B4 is the applicant's notification letters and proof of mailing to required neighbors. B5 is the application with the attached narrative. B6 is a photo of the view of the property. B7 is the plans, there's one page of that. B8 is the deeds to deed the property establishing applicant's standing to pursue the zoning relief requested. B9 is the Planning Bureau case report, and B10 is the City of Harrisburg Planning Commission resolution. So we have B1 through B10.
Thank you. I'd like to note that the zoning administrator is still sworn in from the first case. Jeff, could you please summarize the case, the issues, and what the city's position is on the case?
Sure. So for the application for case number 2567 proposes the construction of a new place of worship use on site. The proposed use requires zoning hearing board approval of a special exception application per section 7-305.7 of the zoning code. So the subject, the project site is actually comprised of two separate parcels. They both accommodated at one time formerly a church on site. So if you'd been by that property before, seen on Google Street View, it was a fairly large and ornate brick church. And it eventually had to be demolished, I think, due to some public safety issues. So the applicants are proposing to just basically reconstruct a new place of worship use on site. Because it's been more than a year, the previous use was obviously abandoned because the building was demolished. So that's why they're coming back here for a special exception approval request before the zoning hearing board. And I believe in the agenda here, it said request relief from off-street parking requirements, but that was basically predicated upon some back and forth we were doing with the project team as far as the site design. And just wanted to make sure that that addition to the case was added in the event that they wouldn't be able to provide enough off-street parking, which eventually they were, so that they didn't need to go back through the process for relief from that aspect. With that being said, the Planning Commission recommended that the zoning hearing board approve the request with the following conditions. If granted the requested zoning relief, the applicant will submit the required land development plan application and receive approval from City Council. As the applicant has not filed additional zoning relief requests related to aspects in the development standards, such as fences, landscape screening, and trees, they will ensure that all applicable considerations are reflected in the land development plan. The applicant will ensure that bicycle parking is provided as required per section 7-327.3E of the zoning code. The Planning Bureau would recommend that such parking be located near the main entrance and, if possible, sheltered. The applicant will utilize the project site plan design presented at the Planning Commission meeting. And again, that was the end result of back and forth between the Planning Bureau and the project team regarding where ingress and egress points were and how the layout of the parking was designed. And the Planning Bureau appreciates the applicant's coordination on that, and the document that was on all of your desks there reflects that final design. And finally, the Planning Bureau recommends that the applicant consider the incorporation and reuse of building components left on site after demolition, such as the cornerstone of the building previously on site. And if you've been out to the site, you can kind of see some of the building debris there, and that cornerstone's still there and would be a kind of nice tie-in for the new building to the older former church that was there. The Planning Commission recommends that the zoning hearing board approve the request for the following reasons. The applicant has demonstrated that they have met the burden for granting the zoning relief requests. If the conditions of the Planning Bureau are adopted, the site design will maximize the potential of the site, including the provision of as much off-street parking as possible and designing the primary frontages with active uses while minimizing the amount of zoning relief necessary. The project will reestablish a place of worship use that was previously on site and which, to the Planning Bureau's knowledge, created no adverse impacts for the surrounding neighborhood. And the project advances the purpose of the RM zoning district provided in Chapter 7-305.4C of the code, as it provides a development at medium densities that will not adversely affect the stability of the area and advances the community development objectives outlined in Chapter 7-301.27 of the zoning code.
Thank you. The applicants could please state your names, addresses, and business titles.
Sure. Reverend Dr. Queen Dickey. I live at 1144 Amber Lane, Harrisburg.
Sir.
I'm John Melham. I'm a registered professional landscape architect. I reside at 278 Sample Bridge Road. My company is Melham Associates at 2247 North Front Street in Harrisburg.
All right.
Pleased to be here.
Thank you. If you could both please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case is the whole truth, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please tell us about the project.
I want to say first, thank you so much for listening to our request. The Lutheran Church built a edifice on the corners of North 15th and Shoup in 1868. Since subsequent time, our church, St. John CME Church, bought that building in the 1960s. We have inhabited that building, but due to the storm that happened in July 2018, it caused a lot of subsequent damage. If you remember, that was the storm that flooded Hershey Park. The building was then considered condemned. Unfortunate to say, we had a long and arduous fight with our insurance company. The building was torn down in 2020, and since that subsequent time, we have now thankfully settled with the insurance company, and our intent is to rebuild the structure a place of worship back on the place where we started.
Ms. Gray? Mr. Phipps? It's pretty straightforward.
Chair, if I may, actually, so the city solicitor's office is requesting that we add a condition. Because the property was demoed, there's actually a municipal lien. If you would notice, the docket number 2021-CV-6315 was filed on July 26th of 2021 in the amount of $50,126.90. So the law bureau is requesting that the board consider the condition that the applicant pay the city and be in contact and communication with the city to resolve the municipal lien so that the debt can be cleared up.
Claude?
So you finally got a question out of me. That lien was the cost for demo, or was that taxes?
That's correct. It was for the demolition.
Okay.
There's also an outstanding sanitation bill that is due that needs to be also discussed.
Would you like to comment?
Yes, I can comment on that. Originally, when the building was being demoed or being demolished, we were in contract with a company called TLC. The contract originally stated that they were going to purchase the land and pay for the demolition. I'm fortunate to say TLC the contract was voided. The reason being is because the contract was due to be enacted on March 2022, in which they were not prepared to go to settlement for the sale of the land. Due to that point, but they had already demoed the property, and so that is the reason why we were told that they were going to demo the property and pay the city for the demolition of the property as part of the contract. We do acknowledge the sanitation bill, and we have, the problem is that we had been in a legal battle with TLC. They filed suit against us because of the fact that the contract expired, and then we have just now not won the suit, but they have decided to amicably walk away from the suit, returning the property to the St. John CME Church. So unfortunate to say, ever since 2019, we have been in legal battles over the property. So that is the reason why the demolition bill is there. But honestly, that was supposed to be a part of the settlement when we were supposed to settle with TLC because they originally wanted to buy the property.
Is there a lien on the property, though, already?
There is.
There is, right? Already on the property itself, right, okay. Was that ever presented to Lake Insurance, either through the city? Was that to their insurance or anything like that? Do you know?
The city law bureau has no knowledge of them working with an insurance company. We are familiar generally with the TLC deal falling through, but not anything about insurance or anything like that.
Okay, and was that also presented to insurance or as part of the claim and?
No, because originally when we filed suit on the insurance company, the building had not been demolished.
Hang on. So the storm happened in 2018.
Yes, that's correct.
The building was condemned.
Yes, the building was condemned in the storm happened in July 2018. The building was condemned August 18.
Okay. And somewhere along the line, it was demolished by TLC.
That is correct.
Did the city pay TLC then? Is that why there's a $50,000 lien then?
Yeah, so the city incurred $50,000 worth of cost to have the building demoed.
But they're, setting that aside, there was a contract that he might buy the land at some point, but that fell through.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, and now there's a lien on the property.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna go to the audience then. Anybody in the audience like to speak on this? Yep. I'd say go to the microphone, but we don't have one.
I'm Reverend Jonathan Dickey, assistant pastor at St. John's Syrian Church. The original demolition that was supposed to be done by Pyramid Construction in the amount of $156,000, in which we received an invoice from Pyramid for $156,000 that they had in fact did the demolition of the church. However, because I was on site when the demolition actually took place in April of 2020, and it was done by the city, all of that evidence and information was then turned over to the Attorney General's office because it was being misrepresented that Pyramid had did the demolition for $156,000, but in fact, the city had done the demolition. In consultation with our attorneys and the attorneys of TLC, TLC presented us with an invoice from Pyramid for $156,000 that they had indeed did the demolition. And then once they received the evidence that we had, they then reneged and pulled all of those invoices back, stating that the demolition was being wiped. And then this is the first time that we are now hearing that there's a lien on our property for the $50-some-odd thousand that the city did the demolition. We are well aware that the city did do the demolition because I have all the evidence of that taking place on April 20th of 2020, and again, which was turned over to the Attorney General's office in reference to what took place. However, we were not aware of the city trying to come back to us for that money. Matter of fact, at the end of December of last year, we were in this building meeting with Mayor Williams in reference to our property and any outstanding issues. And at no time did Mayor Williams speak of any outstanding liens or demolition of the property. The only thing she asked of the church is that we work with TLC to clear up the pending lawsuits, the one from our church and our annual conference, the New York, Washington Annual Conference, and TLC's lawsuit against us. And both of those lawsuits were settled and fully released on both parties.
That lien, though, when was that done? Right?
It was filed on July 26th of 2021.
Right, okay. And that's been on there since then. So, I mean, this isn't
Correct.
something new. I mean, that lien has been on there, okay. I think there was something I was gonna say.
Mike, do you want to swear his testimony in?
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Your name again?
Reverend Jonathan Dickey,
Okay, Reverend,
assistant
okay.
pastor at St. John Seaman Church.
Okay, and Reverend, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you already provided was true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also to keep this on track, so far, what we've heard, and we're talking with people in the audience, but Mr. Mellon, right, I mean, he was sworn in.
He
and
was sworn in but has not testified.
Testified yet, okay.
I think he's here as a design expert.
Right.
Yes.
Just to say too.
Mr. Mellon's here as a design expert.
Excuse me, I do have one more statement. Sure. In reference to the trash bill, in August of 2018, when we were demanded to leave the building, and we've been out of the building, off that land for over 5 years now, we contacted Public Works. All of our trash receptacles were turned back in, and all service was stopped at that point. But we have still been charged as if we had trash service going back to 2018. After speaking to, I'm sorry, I don't have my notes in front of me, the lien specialist for the city, who works in conjunction with Public Works, he is working on recalculating that bill from the moment we left in August of 28, going back, and everything since then removed.
Anyone else from the audience? Okay, I'm going to take a quick recess here.
You got a good one, Doctor. The city doesn't want it. The city won't want it. Fighting who? The city.
Mr. Mellon, do you have anything to add on the design side?
No, the only thing I had brought, I didn't know, thank you for taking care of the amended plan. And again, we thank Mr. Knight for his quick assistance prior to the planning commission. I was concerned that the plan you had might have been the older plan, the first plan that we submitted. Obviously, you must, I brought extra copies in case you don't have that.
I think I do, Jeff.
And to that point, the one or two of the comments in our original narrative are no longer operative. The access obviously was changed from 15th Street to coming in off of Bonbon. That's That's about the only thing I can.
Okay.
I just wanted to, with the parking, and it was based on like 40 seats or whatever in the,
I believe it was 50 seats.
50? Okay, and so they would still be, and the parking that would be provided was like an estimate of off-street parking, 14, 15 spaces, something like that? Is that,
They'd be required to have 13 spaces, because it's
Right.
one for every 4 seats.
Yep.
And so, based on the configuration of the parking and access drives, I think it was a little up in the air exactly how many they would have, but they obviously meet the requirements of their current site plan.
We currently have 17.
okay, and that's what I just wanted to confirm, so I don't really have to get into that, so, okay.
The conditions that are set forth in the planning committee's conditions, are you okay with those? Or any comments on this? Okay. Do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
The conditions, this is from the planning, am I correct?
Right,
Okay,
just the ones the planning put on.
okay, thank you.
Then I'm going to make a motion to approve with the conditions set forth in the planning committee's resolution for approval. Seconded by Mr. Phipps. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Save myself from being hit by lightning.
All right, that brings up 2568.
Okay.
That's 1719 Market Street. No variance application for 1719 Market Street. If the solicitor would please read into the record.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have B1, proof of publication, Patriot News, November 5 and November 12, 2023. B2 is the letter sent from the planning director to the applicant notifying of the hearing. B3 is the hearing notice posting on the property. B4, applicant's notification letters and proof of mailing to required neighbors. B5 is the application with an attached narrative. B6 is a photo of the view of the property. B7 is the plans, and there's a page of that. B8 is a deed to the property establishing the applicant's standing to pursue the zoning relief requested. B9 is the Planning Bureau case report, and B10 is the City of Harrisburg Planning Commission resolution. So we have B1 through B10.
Thank you. I'd just like to note that Jeff is still sworn in from the first case.
Yeah.
Right.
So the application for case 2568 is a proposal to establish an accessory parking lot for the congregation of the church at 1710 Chestnut Street. While an accessory parking lot or structure is permitted by right in the RM district per section 7-305.7 of the zoning code, per section 7-333.2A6 of the zoning code, an accessory use must be subordinate to the principal use or building and located on the same lot with such principal use. So basically, the request here is because the proposed location of the surface parking lot is not on the same lot as the church, which is divided by Zarker Street, as you can see in the applicant's site plan there. It requires a variance to establish a accessory parking lot as a principal use of the property. And actually, similar kind of to 1001 North 18th Street, the applicants did previously get approval to do this project and move forward, but because no action had been taken within a year, the approval was automatically revoked. So essentially, the applicants are coming back for this more or less the same project that was previously approved by the zoning hearing board. There are some minor changes in terms of the layout of the current proposal to the former one, and the current proposal has has one ingress and one egress point, whereas the previous design had a singular combined ingress-egress point. So that's effectively the only changes to the current proposal. The applicants are, proposing to, I think, meet all the applicable conditions of the zoning code, such as landscape screening and trees, and basically abide by the decision previously made by the zoning hearing board in regards to this proposal. With that being said, the Planning Commission recommends that the zoning hearing board approve the request with the following conditions. The applicant will remove the barbed wire from the existing fence, or if the project proposes new fencing, the applicant will ensure that no barbed razor or other security-type fencing is installed. The applicant will coordinate with the city engineer's office on the removal of the curb cut and driveway onto Market Street and reconstruction of the sidewalk along the Market Street frontage in accordance with the city's sidewalk ordinance and ADA regulations. The applicant will install the required landscape screening and on-site trees shown in the site plan for the previously approved design from 2020, and will coordinate with the city arborist on the appropriate native vegetation to use for the proposed landscaping. Landscape screening will be permitted on the interior of the existing or replacement fences, and the zoning code requires the landscape screening to be on the exterior, public-facing side of fences. The applicant will coordinate with CRW on the installation of new stormwater management facilities and potentially green stormwater infrastructure on site. Approval of a building permit for the work will not be granted until formal approval from CRW has been received. And finally, the applicant will be permitted to lease spaces to surrounding residents and/or businesses during times in which it is not normally used for church congregants. And the reason that condition was added was because the applicant's, the site is located kind of in the middle of the block there on Market Street. And in recent years, there have been other proposals for redevelopment of vacant properties and buildings surrounding this that were eventually either denied or withdrawn due to community opposition due to lack of parking. And at the time, I think it was noted that eventually this project would be going forward and potentially spaces could be, leased. So we wanted to make a notation here that even though its primary use is as an accessory surface parking lot for the church, because of its location and the amount of parking we'll have, it can also serve to help redevelop other properties in the surrounding neighborhood. The Planning Commission recommended that the zoning hearing board approve the request for the following reasons. The applicant previously received approval for the proposed use in September 2020. Although the approval was automatically revoked per section 7-323.5H of the zoning code, and the project design has been modified somewhat from the initial proposal, primarily through reconfiguration of the parking layout and the addition of a second vehicular access point. As the applicant notes in their narrative, the property had previously operated as an informal parking lot. As such, the proposal will formalize this configuration and ensure the property is designed to be in accordance with the current regulations of the zoning code. And finally, the proposal will redevelop a currently vacant site into something with more utility for the applicant and potentially the community, as well as a more attractive design with landscaping that will contribute to the aesthetic improvement of the Market Street corridor.
Thank you. If the applicants could please state their name and addresses.
Tim Halbfoster, 1401 Lambs Gap Road, Mechanicsburg.
Okay, and I'll note that Mr. Mellon is still sworn in from the last. So if you could please raise your right hand.
No alias.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Please tell us about this project.
You want me to tell? Go ahead.
We took over this church in 2005. I actually pastor in Enola, and we revitalized the church. There's about 12 people left in the church, and we have our campus pastors that do all the real ministry there every week, right here, Mike and Shauna Abreu. And we've been wanting to pave this parking lot. It's been used as a parking lot prior to the church even getting this facility before 2005. The church has had it for decades. And so it's been used even, I think, before the church even had it. And it's in a situation where it's very hard to plow in the wintertime. And it is an eyesore, and we've really rehabbed the whole building. We had the ugliest church building, I think, in all of Pennsylvania at one point there. And we've put tens of thousands of dollars into the building. Today, the church runs between 100 and 150 people on a Sunday. There's a lot of outreach that goes on continually throughout the year. And actually, this parking area, it'll be a little bit nicer if it is paved, because we do use it now to do outreach. Just a few months ago, we had a big community outreach and gave out sneakers to kids and all kinds of other things and food. And we've had in the past Convoy of Hope, a food truck that came in there, and we served over 4,000 people there a few years back. And so it's really a help to the church, and also a place where we can get with some of the young people there and try to direct them in the right direction. So we're just trying to help the neighborhood. And we do need the parking because the church has grown.
And the conditions that were set forth by the planning commission, are they acceptable?
Yes.
Any questions? Mr. Phipps?
I've actually looked at that site. There's entry from, it's fencing all the way around, and one of the conditions is the fencing's gonna come down, and you're gonna do something different with that, correct?
Well, the condition was if the fences are retained, they have to remove the barbed wire. But if they put up new fences, it, can't be security-type fencing, basically.
Yeah, because the lot's fenced and closed.
Sure.
There was once an entry point, because there's gates there from Market Street.
Correct.
And was one of the conditions that they're gonna take that entry, that away?
Right, the curb cut would be removed, and they would reconstruct the sidewalk to ADA standards across the
So
length.
it's always gonna be from Zucker Street.
Right.
To this property. Okay. That's the only questions I have. Thank you.
I'm going to open it up to the audience. Would anybody like to make comment from the audience? No one on the right, no one on the left, anybody in the middle? All right, I'm going to make a motion to approve of the conditions set forth in the planning committee's resolution for approval. Seconded by Ms. Gray, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Just a question, so how long do we have to do this parking lot now? Because it is difficult sometimes, the financing, getting all that in place and.
So from a procedural standard, you have a year to file a building permit.
Okay.
And then I think building permits themselves are applicable for 6 months, I believe. So theoretically, you'd have 18 months from today to begin work, I suppose.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Or come back.
Okay. This is our second time.
Please don't.
Last time it was through Zoom, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, COVID time.
All right, so that brings up 2569, a variance and application for 2701 Industrial Road. Will the solicitor please read into the record the documents that are in the city's file?
Sure, I will. Okay, so we have B1, proof of publication, Patriot News, November 5 and November 12, 2023. B2 is a letter sent from the planning director to the applicant dated November 14, 2023, notifying of tonight's hearing. B3 is the hearing notice posting on the property on October 25, 2023. B4, applicant's notification letters and proof of mailing to the required neighbors. B5 is the application with an attached narrative. B6 is a photo of the view of the property. B7 are plans, 2 pages of that. B8 is a deed to the property establishing the applicant's standing to pursue the zoning relief requested. B9 is the Planning Bureau case report, and B10 is the City of Harrisburg Planning Commission resolution. B1 through B10.
Can I just note that they're both still sworn in? As Mr. Melham's doing.
Okay.
I'm going to make a note that Mr. Knight and Mr. Melham are both still sworn in from the previous case, so. Well, does, Jeff, go ahead and.
Yep. So the application for case number 2569 is a proposal to construct a 143-space commercial parking lot without the required landscape screening along the western property line, which requires zoning hearing board approval of a variance request per section 7-307.12C of the zoning code. A 3-foot-high landscape screening is required along the length of the lot line. So this is similarly to some of the other cases we've heard tonight. Had actually gotten approval back in 2016. At the time, the design was a little bit different. It was proposed to be a gravel parking lot without lighting on site, and I believe without the landscape screening. The applicant at that time received approval, although the Planning Bureau had recommended denial of those proposals, mainly along the lines for the gravel parking lot, because you can't line gravel, so you couldn't have like the necessary parking, dimensioned parking spaces and things of that nature. And a land development plan was filed and I believe approved for the project, but it was never recorded. And so because of that, this one's actually a little bit different than the previous ones, whereby land development plan was filed at the same time within the appropriate time period, but the 5-year grace period of land development plans has expired at this point. So they basically have to come back before the zoning hearing board to make this request. This current proposal does change some of the aspects of the zoning of the project. It only has 143 spaces, and I believe that's probably a result of the fact that the applicant is proposing to pave the lot in this one, so it's a little bit more formalized than the previous design. The applicant also proposes to add site lighting for the parking lot. I believe the proposal to pave the parking lot was also due to a request from the prospective, user of this, which is the PA Farm Show. The property is located in a commercial general district, which does permit a commercial parking lot by right. So that's why the use, as opposed to the last case, does not require zoning relief. So the Planning Bureau, with all that being said, the Planning Commission did recommend that the zoning hearing board deny the request for the following reason. The applicant has not demonstrated that there are either conditions unique to this site which create a hardship, nor provided a compelling justification that the relief sought will mitigate the hardship. And requiring the applicant to conform to the standards of the zoning code will not impair the overall project or otherwise impose unreasonable burdens on the applicant. The parking lot can otherwise be developed as proposed. And so basically our position is that there's nothing inherent in the site itself that precludes the installation of the parking lot screening all the way around. The applicant noted during the Planning Commission meeting that it was largely a financial request, and also did note that there was some landscaping proposed for the interior of the lot. So, from the Planning Bureau's perspective, we feel that the cost of landscaping one of the property lines is not exorbitant, and even to offset that cost, some of the proposed landscaping within the site can be located to the periphery of the site.
Thank you. Mr. Mellon?
Thank you. I take no dispute with Jeff's comments about the Planning Commission meeting. We did not submit any graphics, any new graphics at that meeting, and that was our oversight, I think. As Jeff had said, initially we felt the Planning Commission was in 2018 had approved the request not to have the buffer along all of the boundaries. It's late. You've had a long evening. You've approved everything. And forgive me for bringing up something that I think is worth a discussion. I won't make a fight out of it, but I am a registered landscape architect. We're talking about landscaping here. And we prepared some plans, if I may. Jeff hasn't seen these. There's Jeff and your new ADC next to you. And for the board. Let me pass some of these out. Just let me pass these out here. Basically two boards. It's plan, you can attach it, it's just clipped together because you may want to look at the photos compared to the plan. So, I make this request.
Let me just do this too, since one is, right, Mr. Melvin, right, the first one looks more like a plan, and is the second one like photos or something? Is that what it is?
First one is a plan, also the photo locations of about 7 photographs.
Okay, why don't we give that then?
Certainly shall.
And so we're going to mark the top sheet as A1, and that's the plan, and then we'll mark the second one, which seems to have seven photos of the property. We'll have that as A2, okay?
So, forgive us for making this request, but here's the plan. And of course, the use of the parking lot, as I've been told, is once every 3-4 times a year, requested. Someone said, I think Jeff said it was the farm show complex that made this request or plan. So, it's not, it's nothing to do with the existing Seabridge. They have plenty of parking there. So what we've done is we've taken the plan that Jeff submitted to Jeff in a simple form, and we've shown the landscaping that we plan to do on this property. We are planting these, we're using trees around these islands. The central island here, we cannot, I think there's some water pipes in there or something with a hydrant, so there may be some reasons we can't do there. Those of, none of you would know, would have any reason to know, that this property is laced with all kinds of subsurface easements, been there for a long time. Main water lines coming down from Middle Paxton Township, sewer lines, all kinds of things. So, not to take too much of your time, the site is triangular. The area over here is reserved for we have sized it, it's for a storm basin. And we have complied with all the buffering around the side. Now, the purpose of this buffering, the ordinance and all that, is to prevent headlight glare. I'm not minimizing that, so we're putting it here where some, along this boundary here. Here is the existing entrance to the State Bridge, right here. You can see it on your plan. This is technically part of our property, but we're just leaving that currently grass and landscaping because the owner of this takes care of that portion of the property. I'm drawing your attention to where we request this variance, which is along the southern boundary here, along the norfolk southern yards. This plan clips off the yards. These yards extend by scale down to the floor. It's a major intermodal facility for Norfolk Southern. Those of you who, I don't know if any of you had any reason to even know what's happening here. It's a 24-hour, 7-day and up, 7 days a week operation. I've been there during the day. One of our guys has been there during the night, and it's constantly going. And there are huge lights along here that we've shown with a little bit of understated yellow, but these things are, folks, you can see this from the moon. It's so bright at night, I'm not overstating it. It's floodlit, this whole area here. The reason we're making this request, and I think our photographs help amplify or at least support our request, is, yes, we could put a strip of, taxes or something, ilex or some sort of plants along here. And there's a better part of 500 feet. It'll cost maybe 10 grand to put stuff in there. Is 10 grand a big portion of the parking lot? It's a fairly significant portion of it. My argument here is it's just totally wasted effort. Now look at these photographs. Look at your photographs, and you want to see this, well, you have a small version there. And maybe I'm just getting in my own way here. But these photographs start at the eastern corner here off our property, and we're looking in down along
or something of the act. And I took some time to come over here and take those pictures. And you'll see there's a crane here that's operating and lifting these shipping containers up, moving them over to another train and setting them down, and it's constant banging and slamming around. Take a look at these photographs as you proceed from the east to the west along Industrial Drive, and you see the situation there. Now, we're asked to put a buffer of 3-foot evergreens to ostensibly to stop headlight glare. Glare to where? These cars that will park in here, they're facing this, in fact, you can see in your photographs some of the high luminaires. I took some shots there of those. You see the lighting that they have there? Very high, very, very bright, scattering all over the place. I'm here for professional reasons. One of the reasons is you don't waste money. You landscape where it's needed, and we do a nice landscape job. I'm proud of being in LA to begin with. But I sure don't like to waste money. And to put this type of buffer along here for the purposes that the ordinance states is just nonsense. And I asked the zoning hearing board's common sense on this issue. It's not to save 10 grand, it's to avoid wasting 10 grand. Pure and simple. I can go through on the, and you know very well the criteria for granting a variance. And I think we have a narrative here. I think you know the ones, if you grant this variance, does it harm the use of the adjacent Norfolk Southern property? Not one whit. Does it, if we leave out, if you grant this relief from the buffer that we have here and that we have all along Wildwood Park Drive, we have a constant buffer there, we have a buffer here along if we leave it out here, does it reduce the property values? Of course not. You go through your criteria, and the only one there is hardship. Well, the site, I'm not claiming financial hardship. The site itself, look at those photographs. I realize they're reduced, but it's just not solving it. Norfolk Southern uses this, they park their vehicles along here, their construction vehicles from time, and the owner here has no problem with them doing that. But these are big trucks. Sometimes they're service vehicles. Sometimes they're tractor trailers. These guys aren't going to respect any little 3-foot strip of evergreens. So it's just the wrong site. It's the wrong location. If there's a hardship, we didn't create it. It's just an it is what it is, industrial road. So it's not, there's no neighborhood here, there's no houses. I rest my case. It's just a simple waste of effort, and we request your consideration on the matter. And forgive my mouth being dry here.
Where's my water?
Jeff, anything?
Well, I mean, as the Planning Bureau noted in its case report, the sole purpose of landscape, there's not a sole purpose to landscape. It's not just to screen headlights. It's to beautify properties, it's to establish visual property boundaries. You know, the applicant has acknowledged there's no financial hardship. In fact, they've said there's no hardship whatsoever. They just don't want to spend the money to do this. And I guess if the planning or the zoning hearing board is going to, you know, accept that as a hardship and a justification, I think it's a very slippery slope to why other projects should not likewise provide conditions that are in the zoning code just because they feel that it would be a waste of a certain amount of money. And so, you know, I certainly understand the applicant's perspective on this, but there just hasn't been a justification proposed as to why this property cannot be developed as the code requires, and we don't feel like they've provided a hardship.
May I have a rebuttal to that? Sure. With
with all due respect to a man that I respect a lot, and that is Mr. Knight, that isn't exactly what my words were. That was not our sentiment. It's not that we aren't going to spend good money on landscaping. We are on this. We're going to spend more on the rest of this site than the ordinance requires, if you want a reallocation of that money. I simply don't want to put landscaping where it's going to be destroyed. It's a hot situation. It's an industrial road. They're not going to survive. They're not screening anything. They're not improving the environment. To use Jeff's term, to put plants along a road that aren't going to make it is not enhancing the environment. It's the wrong location to try and do something like this. We don't control industrial road. We don't control the traffic. We don't control how they park. Sometimes they park across on our property, on our client's property. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to raise an issue with Norfolk Southern, and he does not. He's a good neighbor. But by the same token, to impose like I said, 500 strip, I'm sure it's going to run 10 grand. It's not a good use of money, and it's not a good policy. I fight with landscape ordinances. Some people try to. I'm trained as an LA. I'm trained to enhance the environment. That's what I want to do. I got 2 degrees in this, and I've got 40-some years of experience in it in 3 countries. But when I see a situation like this, where ordinances can't accommodate specific situations, no fault of the ordinance, it's just the way it is. I have to stand up and say, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And that's why I'm taking your time at 8:30 tonight.
Right.
Huh? Yep.
Is it only going to be used for farm show related parking, or is
My
it going to?
understanding is it's been the history of it. It's been for not every event, when they need the overflow parking.
If it's formalized, could he use it for tractor trailer parking?
No, there's no, it's not for tractor trailer parking. It's Norfolk Southern, whatever they want to park on that road. To my knowledge, no one has any limiting control over that road. We sure don't.
No, I mean the lot after it's built. Would he lease it to?
No, he's never had any, we've never had any discussions for tractor trailers?
Yeah.
For whom? For what?
The ones that park in my neighborhood.
I don't think that's not what Mr. Zabrin wants to do. No, no. There's no hidden agenda here, not that you're suggesting there might be.
No, I'm not suggesting he should.
We went to the effort because we didn't have a clear case at the planning commission. We were last that night, what time was it? 9 o'clock, 9:30 by the time we got, and I didn't find it. But this time, I spent our money. I said, let's do some graphics here to show where this is. I invited the planning commission it was too late to go down and look at this. And that's why we took the pictures, and those pictures are small. But it is what it is. It's an industrial drive used by the railroad for the railroad's purposes, lit up for the railroad's purposes. There's no function of any landscaping in that little strip. There's no controlling, there's no curb to support it, protect it. It's going to be wasted. It's a dry climate. It's dry down there. It's dusty down there. Gentlemen and lady, I just request your consideration on this.
Is that dusty?
Yeah, I don't have to vote on it. I think it's a I understand it, but also trying to look at, the requirements that Jeff says. I can be in agreement with Mr. Mel because I think I understand that, but it's got to be able to write, a decision too.
Do you have any questions?
So it's a tough one, yeah.
The only other thing I can say is that, you know, that we see so much of it now in our work, and I'm not the only professional. I'm just gonna, just a little editorializing, but we've been doing this a long time. And there are a lot of professionals like me that look at these ordinances, not just landscaping is a minor ordinance. I usually don't have issues with them unless they try to overcomplicate something that should be relatively simple. What environmentally fits in a certain situation. But the people that write the ordinances are different people. So I don't know what their training is or what they have. We rest our case on the ability of your staff in municipalities, Mr. Knight being a luminary as far as we're concerned, and I mean that seriously. We rely on them to use their professional judgment. To blindly follow a ordinance that isn't in its final state, that doesn't address specific issues, that's what you put your faith in to your municipal staff. Now, if they say, well, look, the ordinance says thus and so, here's the recipe, and we gotta have all these 65 ingredients to fry an egg, and I'm overstating it here, but you understand what I'm talking about. That's what has to change. It has to come from, I mean, where waste is involved, where silliness involved, where, you know, I'm not saying all ordinances are bad. I'm saying some parts of some ordinances are bad. And it should be changed. It just should be changed.
But we don't have, as the zoning board, we don't have it within our purview to do that. Recommendations of city council or from planning organization, they need to be the introduction of it.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with your argument. I'm not one to make the precedent to allow others to come out. We even had
See,
one
that's the
where they
problem.
came to change with,
See,
so
that-
I'm gonna make the motion to deny this variance request. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Gray. All in favor of the denial? Aye? Aye.
Thank you for consideration.
Absolutely. So, and with that, that ends, I think my last night is the zoning.
I know.
I'm gonna miss you all.
And I guess the only other business is actually just to introduce because I didn't get a chance to do so now, he obviously didn't need to be sworn in for the meeting, is the new Deputy Planning Director, Mac Breach. So he will be taking over in 2024 and hopefully well beyond. You know, I may be in attendance here at the January meeting, but he'll be leading things next year.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, and with that, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor? Aye. Have a good night.
Thank you.